Chapter 104. He had heard the jeers of his colleagues as he returned to his quarters after finishing training for the day. They seemed intent on making sure he heard their complaints. Such characters had always been numerous, even when he was merely a deputy commander. But ever since Kishila Orr had nominated him either to succeed as a commander, each day was filled with insults that stuck like blows to the back of his head. To be honest, Yudhir himself didn't understand why Kishir, who had been doing so well as a commander, would suddenly decide to step down, or why he would pass a position on to him of all people. But objectively, he could only surmise it was because there was no one else in the unit stronger than him at that time. The unit's mood was more menacing than ever due to an accident during a recent monster extermination mission, which had resulted in the death of some members. Yudhir had intended to brush off most of the insults he had heard, but those rascals had crossed a line. That bastard sure has it easy. Everything was settled after he offered his ass to the commander. He was the one who was supposed to be in the monster extermination team, but the commander stole him away, saying he had to train his successor, so poor Gakane had to go instead. That bastard who only plays with the commander doesn't even know who died. I'm so jealous. It's hell for the rest of us every day. Beyond the curse-laden rumors, they laughed with cold mirth. Yudhir stopped in his tracks and turned around. Upon making eye contact, they flinched in surprise but quickly attempted to hide their fear and stepped forward. What are you looking at? Got something to say? Seems like the ones with something to say are you lot. Yudhir's voice was low, anger simmering beneath the surface. Do you want to be the commander? What? Do you want to be the commander? He repeated. What nonsense is this? What if I do? Are you going to hand over your position? That could be arranged, provided you can defeat me. Upon hearing that he would readily relinquish his position if any of them could defeat him, they eagerly lunged at him. After thoroughly beating the Dimbits, Yudhir gathered them up like a bundle of dried fish and dumped them in the middle of the dining hall, visible for all unit members to see. That's how the situation ended up as it was. He never decided the position of commander. He didn't enjoy engaging in foolhardy antics under the pretense of bonding with his colleagues. He never wanted any of it, but the cold insults always seemed to follow him. It was Kishila Orr who had nominated Yudhir Ale as the next commander. Yet, why did all the disputes against aim only at Yudhir? Of course, he was younger and of lower status, but that didn't stop him from getting angry despite the reasons being glaringly obvious. Yudhir recalled the harsh words his beaten and fallen comrades had spat out like curses. He disliked all of what they had said, but particularly detestable was the rumor that Yudhir had offered his body to the commander. Had the claim been completely false, he would have easily dismissed it. However, no matter how it happened, the fact that he had engaged in a sexual relationship with the commander was true. Even though it was due to an incident, the fact that the rumors were not baseless and he couldn't outright deny them stung his pride even more. Your anger still hadn't subsided? Would it have subsided for you? It's because of this incident in the first place. Right, it's all my fault. I get it. Kishir's response was soft, as though he had read the resentment hidden behind Yudhir's words. Yudhir had deliberately been provocative, momentarily closed his mouth at that gentle reply. That's how it always was with Kishir. He was a man capable of repelling pointed swords aimed at him with the ease of a feather. But Yudhir, I said that showing appropriate strength could be one way of gaining respect. I never insisted that it should be the only way to deal with others. Am I right? That Yudhir looked at Kishir, then avoided his gaze and bowed his head. Yes. Ever since Kishir had named Yudhir as his successor, he was frequently absent. Whenever he returned, he called for Yudhir and taught him many things. But apart from the practical matters, the rest was mostly airy talk. Still, occasionally, some of his words proved helpful in setting future policies. One of them was that a person with strong power should not use it recklessly. Frankly, it wasn't a statement that entirely resonated with him. Yet, seeing Kishir himself demonstrating such behavior, those following him couldn't help but be influenced. To Yudhir, who had been interested in training, Kishir was like his first mentor who instilled in him a sense of responsibility and the mindset needed for a leader. If only their relationship was a simple one of respectful admiration, then he could ignore whatever nonsense those around him were saying. I definitely made a mistake. At Yudhir's insincere apology, Kishir let out a chuckle. Even so, you followed the dual protocol as you should, so it's not a big deal of a problem as before. Personal emotions are hurt, but that's that. Well, that's good. At least you're considering how to rectify your actions in the future, which is fortunate. Consider how I felt hearing this news right after returning from Paleta. Can you imagine how surprised I was? Ever since Kishir declared that he would pass his position to Yudhir, he was often away. Mostly, he visited his fief, Paleta, but his frequent absences left Yudhir, who had to manage affairs in his absence, with a sour taste. What were those left behind to do when he disappeared without reason? The one who should have thought about the consequences before acting wasn't Yudhir, but Kishir. Yudhir felt a desire to voice a complaint, but swallowed his words. Maybe because he had dealt with the incident caused by Yudhir right after returning from Paleta, Kishir, seated at his desk, looked paler than usual. Despite the shadows under his eyes and the color draining from his lips, his beauty still rivaled the manifestation of the sun god. However, all Yudhir could see was the deep fatigue etched on his face. Ever since the previous emperor had passed away and the new emperor ascended the throne, Kishir's excursions had been becoming more frequent. Rumors circulating quietly that the reason he was relinquishing his position was due to conflicts with the current emperor, with whom he shared no blood ties. However, the concern that weighed heavier on the minds of the cavalry members was the potential disbandment of the cavalry following Kishir's resignation. The new emperor originated from a family not particularly friendly towards awakeners, so such worries held considerable credibility. Among all these swirling rumors, the absolute trust Kishir Lahore once received from the members gradually began to fade. Fear and unease were instead directed in full force towards Yudhir, the common born successor designated by Kishir. Everyone wished for Kishir to do something. After all, he had responsibility to the cavalry as their commander. Yet, Kishir had done nothing so far. Apart from when teaching Yudhir, he never disclosed his intentions or plans, even to him. Yudhir wanted to know why Kishir was resigning, why he chose him as a successor. These were, in truth, things Yudhir most wanted to understand. Yet, sometimes, what seemed the closest was often the farthest. Wouldn't it be better if someone else took the commander's position, not me? Yudhir blurted out impulsively as he looked at Kishir, who appeared fatigued. Although it was a spur of the moment, it was a sentence he had repeated more than 10 times already. No, and as always, Kishir's response was succinct and firm. Aren't you tired of repeating this? There are plenty of people in the cavalry who, even if not as powerful as me, have a higher status and are competent. Choose one of them as your successor. I just want to focus on my training. At Yudhir's words, Kishir gave a slight, sardonic smile. Do you think I'm handing over the position of commander to you simply because you're powerful? Isn't that the case? Of course not. Yudhir furrowed his brows deeper. What on earth was he saying then? Yudhir, well aware of his own strength, was equally able to critically assess the rest. He, Yudhir Ale, was unsociable and harshly fit with others, his demeanor always cool and detached, uninterested in anything he disliked. But, born a commoner without friends, it was laughable to think he could succeed the perfect Kishir Lahore as commander. So what is it then? Your keen eyesight. Yudhir was momentarily speechless at the answer that flowed calmly. It was also when Kishir began to chuckle, as if finding Yudhir's expression amusing, that he managed to open his mouth. I don't understand what you mean. I would appreciate it if you could explain it in a way a commoner like me could understand. How many times have I told you that you are no longer a commoner, Lord Ale? Belittling yourself is not good. If you have forgotten, no. Of course he remembered, and it was true that Yudhir's current title was that of a lord. However, the world refused to accept someone of common origin regardless of their received title. And what was important wasn't that right now. What does keen eyesight mean? Seems like we are not communicating well. We used to connect better. Has your charm decreased a little while my deputy commander wasn't watching? Commander. As Yudhir's voice turned ominous, Kishir tilted his head and laughed heartily.